right. Thank you again for joining us from wherever you're calling from. This is an exciting time to gather together and, have conversations about the issues that really matter to us. So, sorry. Yeah, so today's event, What's the Story with Family Planning, is hosted by Population Connection, Population Media Center, and Women for Conservation. On the call, we have some incredible speakers with us today. Bill Ryerson, founder and president emeritus, and Natalia Cerese, the vice president of international programs at Population Media Center, an organization that improves global health and well-being through entertainment education strategies. They will share more on this, and you can also read their full profiles on our event page. And also joining us from Colombia is Sarah Lara, the founder and executive director of Women for Conservation, an NGO helping rural women living near Colombia's biodiversity hotspots to access family planning, participate in conservation initiatives, and learn eco-friendly livelihoods. Now, if you have any questions for our speakers, please drop them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We'll do our best to address them during the Q&A portion, which will be facilitated by our senior analyst, Anna Evans. For any questions we don't get to live, we apologize in advance. We'll provide written answers along with a recording of this presentation and access to the chat discussion. So please put your comments there as well. So that's all from me for now. I'll hand it over to Population Media Center to get us started. Bill, feel free to take it away.
Thank you so much, Florence. It's a great pleasure to be part of this panel. I've been involved in the population field now for 54 years and actually attended the first World Population Conference and was part of the Secretariat for the NGO Forum at the 1994 conference and have attended the UNFPA events, anniversary events subsequent to that. So I've been involved in this field for a long time. And I started Population Media Center 27 years ago because it was clear at the time, and it's even clearer today, that governments by themselves were not going to do what was sufficient to address the need to create a sustainable planet with equal rights for all, which was really the mission of Population Media Center. So we address through entertainment mass media, as Florence said, a combination of reproductive health, gender, and environmental issues, because environmental behaviors are critically important, as well as reproductive health and gender attitudes and behavior. And among the things that I think are critical in the background to this is the fact that, as the UN Environment Program has found, expanding human farming and expanding human habitation are the #1 and #2 reasons behind loss of biodiversity that makes the planet habitable. And climate change is just one of the symptoms that we're living beyond the carrying capacity of the planet with regard to our combination of numbers of people and lifestyles. And second, the demographic dividend is something that has helped people escape from poverty, but there's still too many people mired in poverty who could live much better lives if they were doing things like sending their daughters to school and stopping child marriage and spacing and limiting of family size and various other issues. So we are looking at a combination of these issues. And as Florence said, we use entertainment mass media because people are not going home at night to listen to health or environmental messages. They're going home at night to relax and be entertained. And one of the critical thinkers behind how people behave was Stanford psychologist Albert Bandura. Bandura is known for his social learning theory, which is all about how role models influence behavior and what makes a role model more or less influential, and his social cognitive theory, which is about how people gain self-efficacy, which is often from role models, but coming to believe that they have the right and the ability to accomplish something new and that change is possible. And when you look at the reasons for non-use of family planning, they have to do with gender inequality, lack of education, male or religious opposition, misplaced information about and misinformation about safety and consequences of using family planning methods, fatalism, and so these can be summarized as the top reasons given in the demographic and health surveys for non-use of family planning among people who are not interested in being pregnant now or in the next couple of years. So it's very clear that out of the 43% non-users of family planning among adult couples worldwide, these are the top reasons given: fear of health effects, religious opposition, male opposition, fatalism, and fear of health effects. So we have created a strategy using serialized dramas that creates characters who are right in the middle of the road in each cultural and language setting, and who get, like we all do in life, conflicting advice from positive and negative characters. And over time, they learn from those characters and they realize who is giving them correct information. And while they may make some mistakes along the way in taking the wrong person's advice, again, as we all do in life, eventually they become positive role models for the audience. And that happens after the audience has fallen in love with these characters. So these characters are created as aspirational characters, but in a cultural setting very similar to the audience, so that people identify with them and aspire to be like them. And it's amazing when we're on the air in any country, and so far we've worked in 57 countries using this strategy, including a top hit in Hollywood. We get letters addressed to characters with people pouring their hearts out about what they're learning from the character and how their own situation has improved by paying attention to what the character did. So, for example, in Ethiopia, where we've done 9 radio serial dramas, because in Ethiopia and many African countries, radio is the top medium, mass media consumed. We got a letter from a woman in Oromia saying, "Thank you for addressing the issue of marriage by abduction. Our own daughter was abducted on her way to school at age 14 and ended up married as a result. And we've been afraid to send the younger girls to school for fear the same thing would happen to them. When your program addressed this issue through the character Wubalam, our entire village, most of whom were listening, came together and we agreed to enforce the law against marriage by abduction. And now it's safe for our girls to go to school." So we get that kind of qualitative feedback, but we also get quantitative feedback. So women who were married women who were listening to that program tripled in their self-reported use of contraception during the 2.5 years it was on the air, while non-listeners had a marginal increase. And at clinics across the country, over 25% of new reproductive health clients named the program as the primary factor that brought them in. In northern Nigeria, with one of our programs, 33% of new reproductive health clients cited the program at clinics that asked what motivated the visit. And a second program in Nigeria was cited by 67% of new reproductive health clients as the reason they'd come in, at a total cost of the entire 208 episode program and airtime of 30 cents US per family planning adopter. So it's a very cost-effective strategy. And we've measured our results in many, many countries. I'll talk about one of our long-term programs in Zambia, which was cited by many people as the reason they had come for family planning. By the end of the program, the end-line survey, after controlling for other variables, showed that our listeners were 60% more likely than non-listeners to report using a modern method of contraception. In Sierra Leone, 50% of new reproductive health clients cited a program we had on the air at the time as the reason they had come for reproductive health. We've also addressed, as I mentioned, environmental issues and environmental behaviors. So, for example, in Papua New Guinea, we did a program that addressed family life and family planning, but also addressed marine conservation. And our listeners were 3 times more active in marine conservation programs by the end of that broadcast as non-listeners, and more than 4 times as likely to be seeking environmental services with regard to logging. So these are just a few examples of the kinds of impacts these programs have had. And as I said, we do them because it helps people. It is based on the reality in each society's life, and in fact, based on extensive formative research to understand what are the issues people are struggling with. So sometimes they'll say something like malaria, and in that program that was funded by UN Population Fund in Sierra Leone to address family planning, we also addressed malaria, and by the end of the program, listeners were 5 times as likely as non-listeners to have acquired a bed net. So there are many issues that can be addressed simultaneously because people do not lead single issue lives. And so these programs are something they go home at night and listen to or watch and find extremely helpful. They're not afraid of being educated as long as they're not bored. But because we're able to do lots of suspense and cliffhangers with episode after episode, we keep a growing audience totally plugged into the program over time. I think that's probably sufficient to give you a sense of what we're doing. And I'd like to pass the mic to Natty. Natalia Cerezer is the Vice President of PMC for International Programs.
We still go back to the mute button, right, guys? Even after 5 years. Well, thank you so much, Bill, for that introduction. So, as Bill said, the way that we approach, it's a very holistic way. We usually, although many are women, the beneficiaries we address because we know that all of us have to grow and keep moving on together. This is why our shows are very entertaining for both men and women. And because of the way our PMC methodology works within the main format, that could be either a TV drama, a radio talk show, with long skits, a video game that we also have. We also have comic books. So we're using all these different formats, understanding and meeting people really where they are, and then using the right dissemination tools to also kind of tackle and connect with people. The way the methodology works, as I said, has over 20 different theories that combine all together. It's what makes it work. We have worked in over 57 countries, as Bill shared, because we rely on completely local teams. So we do bring the methodology, we do bring the training, but we use all local talents, all local producers, all local actors, actresses. So then that's how we engage. And this is why for us it's also so important context-wise to write the stories also from a specific region. Because as we know, even within our own internal countries, we have very different realities, depending on the people that live close to the sea or close to the borders, to the people that live in the highlands. So it's very important how we then just craft the stories to make it fit. So then these role models really do feel like my uncle, or really do feel like my neighbor, or really do feel like myself. And this is how we take people through this journey of transformation. The way we do this, as you saw Bill cite out all these amazing numbers, because impact is very relevant for us. It's great to have bigger audience and to reach a lot of people, but are we really moving the needle, right? How can we just make sure that we are enabling attitudes and behavior change, and also contributing to social norm change, because a lot of us are working around the work from these issues. So we're all just contributing toward this in the future. And the way we basically do it is, through three types of research at the beginning. First is the situation analysis, which is understanding all the different infrastructure that is available in the country toward the different issues that we're doing. Just so then we partner with them to drive them and accelerate their own goals, driving them people. The other one that we do with situation analysis is understanding the legal framework of the country to work within the framework and also help the country reach their own goals. And then with all of the situation analysis and understanding around the issues that we're tackling, then secondary, we do the formative research. And this is where we really understand, to inspire the actors, the writers, what is enabling people to change? What are those barriers? And in order to understand those barriers, then we create the transitional characters. Usually we are connected to like the good guys and the bad guys in the movies. And really all of us have a little bit of it. So we create positive characters and negative characters that share different tips, or different discussions with this transitional character. And this transitional character then makes good or bad choices and then lives the consequences. So then through vicarious learning, people learn alongside and united with this character. This character can sometimes be man, because as we know, especially, around a population, a lot of power dynamics rely on men. So this is why for us it's so important to connect everybody in this. And then through these four triggers, when big decisions go around the storytelling, when people are so engaged with these characters, that's where we also drive epilogues. So then we drive people specifically to all the different infrastructures or services in order to help them enable change through these whole stories. And the third research that we do at the beginning of a project is hard baseline, really hard indicators around all of these different issues. So then we come back at the end with the end line to see how we, just shift some of these numbers. And those are some of the numbers that Bill already shared. And then in the future with some of the conversation, we will continue to share with current programming as well. And then also the qualitative, because we also need to keep learning and understanding the why. And this is basically the process that we do. We usually do 4 different issues because, as Bill is saying, it's very complex. We know how, gender violence also connects, with sexual reproductive rights, so a lot of things are going on, even in women empowerment, financial stability. So there's all these different things that we can tackle just so then we can provide a whole approach toward the different things that we are doing with people. And yes, so that's a little bit so I can leave then more time for discussions.
Wow. Amazing, just amazing. Always wonderful to hear from PMC about the wonderful work you do. And, I come originally from a country where you're doing a lot of that great work. And I have a former colleague whom you partner with, as a local who has written that Akakunizo, who has helped write something for the Akakunizo program, which is amazing. And most people listen to radio. They go with radios in their gardens. They're always in their gardens and they have the radio. And one story from Miriam totally inspired me. And when you talk about power dynamics from the men, her husband beat her up when he found out she was using contraceptives. But she told him, hey, listen to this program.
Mm-hmm.
The guy listened. And he was taking her by hand to go get the contraceptives. So you're making great changes. Yes. And Bill talked about
sharing that.
Yes, it's amazing. Honestly, it's working. And Bill talked about the demographic dividend, which is something we've discussed here as well at CPD58. Asked a question which wasn't really answered, but I will address that in our blog. So you should watch out, everything that's happening. So yes, thanks again, Bill and Nettie. That was amazing. And I'm looking forward to digging deeper into your work during the Q&A session, sorry. And just a friendly reminder, if you have questions for our speakers, drop them in the Q&A. Make comments, please, as we go along at the bottom of your screen right there. So up next, we'll be hearing from Sarah Lara, the founder of Women for Conservation. Sarah, it's your floor.
You're on mute, Sarah.
Of course, the mute button again. Okay, so thank you so much for your time and for being here. It's wonderful to have this opportunity to share about what we do in Women for Conservation. And our mission is very simple, is to partner and empower women to protect endangered wildlife and habitats, especially in the Global South. Our work focuses on three main pillars, which the first one is conservation, protecting these species. And the second one is creating a healthy population and providing access to family planning to women in these rural areas, so these key biodiversity areas. And the third one is providing sustainable livelihoods and economic empowerment for these communities. So in my experience working in conservation for 25 years, I decided to set up this organization, a 501c3, to work towards uniting these three components. Sorry, just the next slide. All the work that we do is around these protected areas and these pristine habitats where are the home for many species. We also, our largest program is right now here in Colombia, which is a country with the highest biodiversity and the highest number of species that are facing threats. We have a lot of endemic species, so protecting these habitats is crucial. That's how we identify these locations. Sorry, it's going very fast. Access to reproductive rights in rural communities, in my opinion, it is vital. We've seen it now through the years, 17 years ago, when we initially started to talk about how the need to empower women and provide access to reproductive rights in the field of conservation was in sometimes very welcome, and in other spaces was very criticized, and it was hard to see the connection between the two things. For me, it was obvious to see it as a woman and also had faced big challenges on my personal story. It became very evident that it was important if we wanted to create opportunities for these women to work in the field of conservation and give it the opportunity to start planning when they wanted to have children, how many children they wanted to have, and take care in between those, the pregnancies, to give their bodies the chance to recover and also to take better care of the babies that were just born. So working in the rural areas, we saw indigenous communities, we've seen colonos, we've seen different groups that come to us to request that we do more and facilitate more campaigns to bring the access to reproductive rights. So the contrast of 17 years ago to today is huge. We've seen that we made a lot of progress. Nevertheless, still a lot to be done. The help from other organizations and from even the government has been very important, but it's still a lot of work. Our work with reproductive healthcare does not stop just with women. Just 2 years ago, we were approached by men from these rural communities who also wanted to be part of the program. It was shocking. I hesitated to incorporate this into our program since it was focused for women. But when we listened from them that they also wanted to be part of the solution, it became clear to us that men were also having difficulties to have access to this, to a vasectomy, to break barriers, to speak to men and to other men, and bring these stigmas down that what vasectomy can, there is a lot of taboo or misunderstanding. So we started to help and facilitate this process for men, and it's been very, very successful, very empowering, and see that men want to help the women. Many times it's easier for men to have a vasectomy than for women to go and undertake different procedures. This is something that we want to highlight, that what we've been doing in talking this message of collaboration and participation for women at the center, but also including men and young men who are copying the role models of their families and the mothers or fathers, is so important. While we do our work is in these rural communities, we partner with these rural women who are already there, so are part of the communities. We help them with the resources, the skills, and we develop this relationship of trust. Takes time, but it's very important and necessary. So this is how we have been working, investing in these women leaders in their own communities. They help us to design the projects and the programs that they see is more important and urgent. So by investing in them, we have a much bigger impact. They are always in their communities, and they have this network of support by being part of our community of women for conservation. So this is how we've been working. Another example is bringing them together to exchange experiences. We create safe space for them to share challenges, and many times abuse or aggressions that they face, financial constraints that they have to overcome. And by having these spaces, we can talk openly and in a safe environment. Our program, when we're starting it in Colombia, in a country with many difficulties, as you all know, we had to do it very carefully, no judging, no pointing fingers, but understanding that if we wanted to have women, which is half of the population, involved in conservation and help us to save species, we had to start from many, many steps back and allow women to share what the challenges were. So access to reproductive rights, number one, followed by access to education, access to training, skills to develop their talents that ultimately will result in a much better income, a financial stability and independence for them that will help with this whole circle of breaking violence, empowerment, and then they can also identify that investing in nature, helping nature with training in ecotourism, training in the field of ecology, biology, it was a way for them to make an income. Our projects now have been replicated with our organization, who is also registered in the US now as a 501c3. We can have another partners in another countries that we've been supporting, like the ones in this slide. We are working in Bolivia, Sierra Leone, Madagascar, Colombia, and also Nepal. Replicating and adapted this very three pillars concept in the project, very simple. And it's just wonderful to see that an idea can just flourish, and we are investing on these leaders. Involving young women in our process and conservation research is so important. So family planning allows them to plan their lives when they want to have their kids, not to interrupt their education. We are facilitating through grants for research, for ecology, and for conservation. And they're the ones who go to the community and connect with them, connect with the youth, connect with the girls. They become these role models who are doing tough work, researching different species that are threatened, but they become the spokeswomen. And it's just beautiful to see that it's a one-to-one communication and engaging them in very simple things that people can do from their homes to conserve and protect. Sometimes we think that conservation and protected environment is a humongous task, But I believe if we do our small part from our homes, we can actually change the whole dynamics. And influencing this young generation is extremely important. So far, we are impacting nearly 72,000 people since 2019, when I decided, together with my daughter, to establish it as an entity, an NGO, allowing us to speak openly and freely about women's rights, the importance of access to healthcare, and it's been the most challenging but beautiful and deep experience that we had in my life. Well, thank you so much. And empowering women and protecting nature is so important. And I'll be happy to answer any questions. And thank you so much to all of you, the people who are listening, and encourage them to continue to advocate for nature and for women. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. That was a great presentation, both organizations. Thank you so much for coming on and telling us a little bit more about what you're working on and the important work you're doing in the spaces of population health and the environments, global development, sustainability, all really fascinating work. So we've got plenty of time for questions. If anyone in the audience has things that they'd like discussed or answered live, please feel free to voice them in the chat and we will get to as many questions as we have time for. So I do have some pre-submitted questions that I'll start off with. Some of them pertain to either organization and some of them pertain to both. So I'll just voice that prior to asking the question and we'll get straight into it. Okay, so the first question is for Population Media Center. You guys have done some amazing work and you've cited some really great statistics speaking to the impact of your work. And I'm just wondering what you've learned over the course of your time at PMC. I'm sure that there's been a lot of trial and error and a lot of different approaches that have been used. But what can you speak to in terms of best practices for storytelling?
I think the key that I mentioned in the chat in response to an earlier question is never telling the audience what to do. We're not giving people lectures, we're entertaining them, but they're learning from role models. And those role models are based on their cultural reality, not ours. So each of these programs is locally written in local languages by writers that we train, but they're all based on the reality of each country and on the concerns of audience members in each country. And that makes the programs relevant to our listeners. And that is why many of these shows have been the top rated shows on the air.
Yeah, I think that partially what we've learned is storytelling has been before us. It's with us as will outlive us, right? I mean, we're always are going to be connected to stories. So I think that the learnings that we have is we have to study very hard every single day because the way people are consuming content, it's very different. The different media landscape, it's fragmenting and it's growing differently. So we're all the times, just testing different formats. We're created even in Zambia, a whole innovation lab with new times and lengths and things just to have also that kind of prototyping mentality, like design thinking mentality all the time, just so we keep up with the times, because it's very important to meet people where they are. So it's not what we want to be prescriptive with them, but it's really embracing when they are open to listening and then sharing. Florence was sharing a thing that it's amazing, and we have to keep learning all the time. So for example, radio is still very relevant. So we cannot judge by our own consumption of media. We have to go and understand what's the real consumption of media in each one of the different countries. And we use mass media because it helps us reach a lot of people. It helps us reach a lot of people at the same time in order to then, also get the tipping point faster to shift behaviors and attitudes. So, for example, what we've learned a lot in Africa and Latin America and even Asia, we work also in Nepal, like Sarita, is that a lot of people are consuming linear radio through their cell phones. Why? Because that doesn't consume data. And we know that more than 70% of people loses their data every single day. They only have out of pocket to consume 1 or 2 hours of data. So they're very picky on what they are using that data for. So understanding all this different landscape, it's so important in order to disconnect and then also to reinforce information. Here in Guatemala, we are seeing a lot of people that are listening to radio, but we are also using YouTube as another dissemination for radio. And what's going on with YouTube listeners is that 50% are listening to YouTube through their TV screens. So we have to understand now even how formats, are now navigating through different modules and things. So I think that learning curve, it's continuous. So when you're working in the entertainment aspect, then yes, you need to continue to embrace things that are strong, our principles that are strong, our PMC methodology, our mission. But then from the entertainment perspective, we have to just keep learning and plugging new things and innovations all the time.
Absolutely, that makes sense. Thank you so much for that thorough answer. There's a question just kind of related to something specific within your work. Just wondering whether you have data on if poverty actually declines in the regions where you're working. Can you correlate your work to development in that way?
Yeah, I saw that question by Stuart, and I actually am going to paste a response in the chat, but just want to briefly say that the process of the demographic dividend that results from people having smaller families and then having money left over at the end of the month and being able to save it or invest it in things like education that builds economic productivity is about a 20-year process in the experience of many of the countries that have gone through the demographic transition and achieved the demographic dividend with much higher per capita incomes. So it's certainly the case that many factors are affecting the economic reality of each country, but it's not something where we try to say directly that a program led to greater per capita incomes in a short period of time, because we know it's a lengthy process. But I'll paste in the chat a much longer response that deals with the demographic dividend.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. There's a question in the chat asking for both speakers. We can start out with Sarah Lara. What challenges are you currently facing with this political climate? I'm sure you've gotten that question many times already.
Yeah, it's a tough time, I must confess, as we all know. And we've been affected in several ways. I think what is the most impacting is actually access to funding, because the funds in many times fuel a lot of the activities that we are able to implement. And it's become more evident that partnerships, working with the grassroots is super important, trying to continue what we're doing, but trying to engage them also as advocates for the needs that we have. We have to continue to work with companies, organizations who are interested in promoting women empowerment and access to healthcare. That is one of the challenges. I think the demands, unfortunately, in Colombia, the demand for illegal for cocaine and illegal products is increasing. That is bringing a lot of more pressure in the natural resources. Communities have been affected. Is the whole dynamic that it makes it very complicated, very complex, and at the same time could be dangerous. So we have to tread these waters very carefully with a message that is what we want is an environment that is protected, everyone, the women also being able to have education and have their access to the rights. So that's another big issue. Talking not only here in Colombia, but also at the global scale. So that's why I admire the work that Natalia and Bill are doing, because it's so important that we communicate it as a global scale and how everything is interconnected. So things that can happen here in Colombia are related to in everywhere in the world. and vice versa. So that's one of the biggest challenge. In some ways, we felt that we make major step forwards, and with the political decisions on decision making, you feel that you're going backwards. But I always listen to the people on the ground who are suffering, I've seen women crying that they need the help because they just buried one of the child for malnutrition and they really need help. So I think that is what it drives internally, this urge to continue to push forward. And it's been a lot of people also interested to keep going and supporting. So what we're doing right here is I would say a matter of life or death, because as we speak, women are suffering, they're dying, kids are dying, and women are facing horrible things. So we must keep going. That's my thinking. Thank you.
Thank you. Natalia or Bill, what challenges are you both facing working for Population Media Center in this current political environment?
Certainly, like Sarah, funding is an issue. We in the last couple of years have not had any U.S. government funding, but that doesn't make us immune to the dramatic reduction in funds available because of the U.S. government in the fields of reproductive health and gender. So we rely on individual support as well as UN support. The UN is our largest donor, as well as various governments that see the benefits of helping women and men achieve their goals in a way that is both humane and non-coercive.
I can amplify that. Being said, the whole development area, everybody that is working around different work, it's being impacted. So it's going to be definitely a new work forward with development. We know that this gap that has been created cannot be filled. It was very verbal with all the different governments and all the different, it's not a matter that they want or not want to fill that gap. It's just a matter of, the reality that we're all facing. I think partnerships are more important and critical than ever. Like just as we're speaking, I'm like, how can we help Sarah? She's in Nepal and I'm in Nepal, right? So we just have to regroup, right? We just have to rethink the ways. The worst of time can then turn into the best of times. So there's things that are completely out of our control, but how can we just try to continue with the work? Funding, it's definitely things that keep all of us up at night, and especially as Sarita shared with all of us, because there's people in the other end that, they're definitely not having a good night's sleep. Things are going to get worse, before they get better. So we have to rethink and move as fast as we can toward this, especially around the topics that we're addressing that are not necessarily, a new focus, and they're really be dropped to the bottom. So it's going to be challenging times, but definitely we have to get together, and thank you for this spaces, for all of us to be sharing our work and then just thinking together, us with all these attendees that definitely they think that this is as relevant as an important, and this is why they are here today.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much, both of you, for speaking, of course, to the very real challenges that we're all facing in light of this current political climate, but also speaking into the hope that this also presents and the ability and opportunity to mobilize and collectively kind of work together to combat and build resilience for our current situations. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so there's a question for Sarah in the chat. She is the person asking the question is first saying that they really like the way that your projects involve women in direct research. And they're wondering if you can say more about the way that the research is actually managed, like how it's funded, what sorts of income the women achieve, and anything related to that.
Okay, so what we do is we are facilitating a small grant for research. We partner with an organization here in Colombia. It's called Prosperous. They have 27 nature reserves across Colombia, and we 3 of those reserves have been developed as a research station. I actually was the executive director of Prosperous until a month ago when I decided to quit and focus my time, 100% of my time, to now Women for Conservation. So while I was there, we left a lot of infrastructure for women, and Prosperous is continuing with that work. And what are we doing now is looking for funds, providing a safer space for women, because it's not easy for researchers or biologists to find a safe place where they can undertake the field work. So that's one of the things. They help the community also, as I mentioned, the training, bringing young kids, especially young girls or young men interested in learning what is the ecology, the biology. That is that inquisitive, they want to know. So it's very nice that that space can be multiplied to share knowledge. What is happening is ecotourism is now a very important sector in the country. We've seen that the government is investing a lot in positioning Colombia as a top destination. We are the number one country for birds in the world, so there is a lot of potential. So what we're doing is training these women to see ecotourism or nature guides, everything related to the green businesses as a very, very important alternative. And it's working fantastic. So over the 15 years that we've been investing in them, we see now they're grown up, they have their own businesses. And the Sierra Nevada, Santa Marta, we help several women associations to form their businesses, and it's changing the dynamics. Now they don't have to sell the land to other people, foreigners or people from other parts of the country, to set up businesses, but on the contrary, they're the ones running the business, making a very good living, and continue to grow and protect their own land where they grew, and become business women or men. So that's how we're doing it, but also making sure that they replicate all of this, because they are the seeds that we've been planting along the years, with the intention that they become the leaders and the spokeswomen and the living testimony of why it's important to connect all the dots. So that's how we're doing it.
Thank you so much. And just to be clear, so this is, you said that you're working in several different countries. So is this a project and a platform that's applied to all different countries? Or I'm wondering if you could speak into how things differ according to where you are and what the cultural relevancy may be there.
There is a cultural difference, but we all have very common themes. For instance, in Nepal, in Madagascar, we've been funding women forest rangers, funding 7 women who are doing a fantastic work protecting the baobab trees. Funding for specifically for women rangers is hard because it has a lot of more challenges, but we've been doing it, providing bicycles for them instead of walking for 4 hours, 3.5 hours to come to work. Now they're doing under an hour in a bicycles. So it's small things that we contribute that change the whole dynamic. For instance, they were preventing fires, but without bikes, a way to do patrolling taking so long. Now with the bikes has reduced less than 10% the fire threats in the protected area. So that's an example of how small things, small actions can have a huge impact. In Bolivia, for instance, women's associations developing their own products with the wool is focused on the Andean bear. Same thing, access to opportunities to training and create their own the funds and money is the same theme across all the different projects. Of course, there's a religion and other aspects, but at the end of the day, we're talking about very common issues.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. This next question is for Population Media Center. And we've been speaking so far just kind of generally about the work that's being done and, the scope and kind of impact of your work in this more global scope and sphere. And I'm wondering, there's a question here asking about if you're able to describe like a specific media project that has had a notable impact on reproductive health or environmental outcomes in the particular region in which it was aired.
Well, I can speak of a few currently. So I can speak from different formats. So for example, we directed a comic book roadshow in Eastern provinces in Zambia as part of all these new programs that we are testing. So basically what we did is we created a comic book that we were projecting in school. So we continue with the serial by going 4 times with 4 different topics that we're addressing, especially around, PrEP, around HIV, and even working together with the Ministry of Education, asking us to lower the age of people that we were going to invite, the children, to 10 years old, just to try to get them, even younger to be addressed. So we were projecting and we had a speaker, so then they could listen to the drama as they were being exposed toward that. So we directed that, and then after that finish, then nurses from the same healthcare facilities, the one-stop centers that they are promoting, were the ones helping us facilitate. So we were able to see all the different discussion that then went through, but that didn't stop there. So we also did these projections with the community leaders. And then we had all these discussions going on, and we recorded those discussions and disseminated them in the radio stations from the locality. So then when these children came back home, the parents already had the trust because the community leaders were already talking about these issues. So we then opened the doors to have holistic conversations within and also provide the tools to where children could go. So for example, just for that one, the whole PrEP awareness went from 7% to 75% just with children, now knowing what they could do in order to take prevention. The other piece that was great was also we measured the community learning about that. And then we saw specifically with the community how it shifted from 18%, to also 75%. So we just generated this general awareness. And out of all the different people that were exposed here on the Eastern provinces, different schools and communities, 84% accessed then, legal and health facilities after they were exposed to the show. So we're really, driving and pushing people toward that. And that's just one example of one of these other things. For example, in Mexico, we joined forces with Televisa, the bigger producer, and we incorporated one whole storyline with transitional characters, both one for teenage prevention, pregnancy prevention and STIs, and then the other one based around power dynamics, gender violence, the sexual violence driven by power dynamics. So then we could see the story evolve. And as Bill was saying, this needs to be entertaining to engage people. So 6 million people sat down every night to watch our characters evolve. And right now, we have been doing all the qualitative, we're waiting for the quantitative, but all these women were saying, we were waiting because this opened the discussions, because we didn't have to talk by ourselves, but we could talk about the characters to then start the conversations in the household. So we opened that conversation with the parents, with their children about reproductive health. And then we're also promoting, and we've been seeing a lot of calls going out, through all the different tools for dual protection, because it's not only, taking care of unwanted pregnancies, but also, just taking care of all these additional STIs that can turn into cervical cancer in the future, or even HIV peaks that we're starting to see growing, in small generations. And the same is happening with Africa, right? In Uganda, 3 out of 4 new cases of HIV are teenage girls. So how can then we just through all this conversation, going back and forth, are bringing this type of results? And just like that, we also have in Liberia, right, when we move, the choice of HHR to 38% to 53%, so all of these things are, and this is why for us it's so important to measure all the different impacts that we're addressing, but we always bring this conversation, toward the table and toward this whole thing. And just one last story from this comic book roadshow is a teacher addressed me. I had the fortune to go there. She addressed me and said, "Thank you." And I'm like, "Why?" And she's like, "For not kicking our boys out." Because a lot of interventions come into the field and just kick the boys out of the agreements. And these are the boys that these girls will marry. So it's very important to shift, the mentality for everybody together. So I think, that's a great thing about, and Sarita just said it also, how great it is for us to empower women, but creating this safe space for everybody, right? It's not a one or, right? It's how we all move together toward the future.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Those are incredible stories. And it's really just so amazing and inspirational to hear the huge impact that you are making in so many different countries and across so many different cultures. So thank you for speaking into that. This next question is for Sarah. Just looking at your very integrated approach to development and your organization's sort of mission overall to kind of span both social and economic and even environmental spheres to kind of create a more holistic approach to development. And I'm wondering, there's a question asking about how can we make progress for integrated approaches to traditionally siloed sectors like environmental conservation versus reproductive health? Like, how can we fuse those two together more appropriately or more progressively, I suppose?
Really, really good question and really tough. I'll do my best because that is the challenge that I have faced within the conservation arena where I'm coming from. It is a subject that it can be very uncomfortable for many, and based on past experiences that went wrong, it has created a lot of very cautious approach, I would say. I think having the space and opportunity to share the good experiences is also encouraging organizations to continue to link the two issues. We all know that the pressure on the natural resources and the correlation with the human population is something I cannot deny. And disasters are getting more intense. We all have somehow suffer climate change. And we keep seeing over and over the children and women suffering terrible adversities. So we keep talking about this subject. We keep showing the good results, bringing to the spotlight, not us, but the people who do their work on the ground, the leaders, the women, the indigenous women, the locals who have so many empowerment in stories to share, and with their own evidence of how we depend on the environment, and we have to do something to help the both. With the success that I think I had working in rural communities in very challenging situations is my ability to connect one-to-one with women and share my own testimony, my intimate, terrible, very harsh life story that I have, and why I'm passionate about women empowerment and helping them to have access. When we become more vulnerable and talk about what happened to us and remove a lot of the things that, yeah, we are in institutions, we have to follow protocols, but at the same time, we are humans, and it's something that connects us to all of us, and through love and compassion and seeing the other person that we see us in themselves, I think is where we have to start and do whatever we can to help. Nature is suffering, women are suffering, we are all suffering. So let's do a little bit at a time. Yeah, we have challenges, but if we help nature, nature recovers super fast. Last year, we declared 2 regional parks with the help of many women and men. And the more we talk about women's rights and involvement, and the young lads that are seeing this, we're changing the dynamic. Maybe I'm too positive, but I see the good. And when you don't judge, and we look at it as how we're going to fix this, that we have the water problem now. Deforestation is bringing challenges, and we need to start restoring. So when we bring these communities to tackle this problem that is affecting all of us, we can get small results really quickly, pretty quickly, I'd say. So it's narrowing down and make it very simple, easy to digest, and with practical results. Thank you for the question. I hope I answered a little bit.
No, thank you for that response. And thank you also for, being so hopeful. I think, in this present climate, we need all the hope we can get. And it's really amazing to get to hear that perspective from someone on the ground working in development in a place affected by so much that's happening right now globally. So thank you. This next question is going to be for both sets of speakers. We can start out with PMC. The question is asking, this panel is focused on, of course, the work of your individual organizations, but more broadly looking at population and how we can slow population growth through rights-based initiatives and development. And one question here is asking, how can we normalize being child-free when much of society is actually restricting access to reproductive health care, like birth control, and then also at the same time pushing pronatalist narratives? And what's an effective way to kind of combat this?
I think it's not an easy issue because there is so much effort at disinformation and a lot of effort to convince people that in fact we face a population decline, which is not at all true. We're growing by about 75 million a year, but certainly using role modeling, including celebrities who have decided to be child-free and fictional characters who become role models for child spacing in every society are critically important to overcoming this new age of misinformation and now disinformation that is trying to lead people into behaviors that will not be helpful to them from a health perspective or economically.
Thank you. Sarah, do you have any remarks on this?
Not much to add, really. I think respecting each opinion on kids having kids or not having kids, I think it comes down to a personal choice, but not stigmatizing or judging one or the other. I think that is what is important. Giving the space for people to express. What I'm seeing is sometimes we need to create more safe space for people to communicate their opinions and how we can be all included in discussions is really important, but not much. It's a tough one.
I
Yeah.
really love a big study that has been conducted in Mexico that there's 11 types of families. Just starting to acknowledge that each family looks different, I think it's good. And even a single person living in its own apartment, now it's called a family because it's self-sustained, and it's creating its own dynamic toward themselves and toward the society. So I think that's a great way just to start exploring and understanding that. That's kind of some of the topics that we're also addressing in this huge telenovelas that we're dividing, because it's illustrating all the different types of family that exist, even families with pets that they really do care about also, so as I agree, and as you just said, Hannah, it's based on human rights, the way, but I think informing people and giving people the opportunity to see the different options, it's just a great way forward. And you can do that through illustrating and then letting people make their own choices, and as Sarita said, and respecting that choice as well, but not with misinformation, right? I mean, I think that's the great thing, that all this noise that it's around people, just how can we provide some clarity, and some understanding around that.
Absolutely, that makes sense. Thank you. Another question is just asking, and it's kind of related to this, but what can be done to influence UN member states, to place a higher priority on women's reproductive freedom? And there's another question related to this that I'm just going to ask because I think it's important to clarify. What are we exactly talking about whenever we're talking about reproductive health and rights and reproductive freedom? Can you clarify both what that means and then how we can place a higher priority on this as in terms of UN member states? We can start with Population Media Center.
Certainly, the UN conferences that have been held in the past have been hugely influential in bringing about a global consensus, not 100%, but a very widespread consensus on the importance of reproductive health for all people and access to information services that people need. Because of political changes over time, the UN has avoided holding a global UN conference on this subject since 1994. So I think the world community may have lost a little bit of attention to this issue, and obviously there are a lot of other things vying for budgets, like military defense of Ukraine, etc. But the importance of preventing crises before they occur is often hard for people to pay attention to when there are so many crises. But indeed, picking up pieces after the fact is always more expensive. So I do think it would be worthwhile for the UN to consider holding another global conference on this subject. And while not everybody will agree, enough will that I think it could get back to being a higher priority for many of the countries that are quite sympathetic to the need for gender and reproductive health work around the world.
Thank you, Sarah.
I think it's really, really important to continue to work on this, in sharing the message that investing in women is a win-win for everyone. Reproductive rights is so important, really is at the base of the rights if we wanted to continue to give the opportunities and not only to benefit the families that we all want to see, but the environment and the commissions and having big platforms could continue to see the reality, this connection between initiatives or people who are sometimes in offices in remote places and don't see the reality on the ground is what it worries me the most, because some decision makers sometimes are taken with complete misunderstanding or not seeing what it is. So it comes down to having that compassion that I was talking about and really advocate for the people, for the people who need it most. So it comes down to that. So if we put pressure from the bottom up, elevate the needs, I don't understand why it's sometimes so hard to talk about family planning and reproductive rights, that women should have access to the basic rights of having checkups. Why is this a type of oppression? It doesn't make sense to me when everyone wants to see their mothers and aunties and sisters and cousins being healthy. Who doesn't want them to be happy? So it doesn't make sense to me. I'm so sorry, but if we can prevent cancers and if we can help them to get education, so let's all continue to change and reframe this message and see them that is for the good of all of us. That's my big frustration. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that makes sense. And ultimately, yeah, it's just basic human rights we're talking about. It shouldn't necessarily be politically motivated or partisan, and yet here we are. And related to that, I'm wondering if Population Media Center, you could speak into a little bit of, in light of how things seem to be changing culturally, we've got a complete assault on reproductive rights in the United States, and that's also translating internationally, especially with cuts to USAID and cuts to family planning. So are you planning to shift your program content or approach in any way, or how are you changing in response to what's going on?
So there's different things that we are, I think, exploring as all of us. This is a great time to just have new brainstormings. Oh, we know that the issue that we're going to be facing in the field is the lack of commodities, right? So a lot of commodities will probably be cut, a lot of distribution, it's starting to be done. A lot of places rely on a lot of this aid in order to have nurses in their places. So one thing that we're doing is we will have to, again, as we said, play very strong on partnerships, how we can all just get together to build, very strong consolidations of efforts in order to move forward and just make sure how we can just continue to be driven to this mission that we're all feel so closely about. We're not about to shift our mission, so right, so we just have to shift the way that we probably used to work to a new way of work. The other thing that we are definitely looking forward is how we, in order of mass communication and using all of this different medium, how can we help people have the right information, right? How can we fight misinformation? How can we just, help people shift norms in order to have healthier life? But then also how we can tell people, what they're entitled to. There's a thing that Bill says, that I love about the organization is that we will always fight dominance of men, on women, of population toward nature, and our world. So how can just continue to work into sending these messages to people in order to make us, be more self-sufficient to moving forward. But a lot of challenges are going to be there in the field with all of this lack of commodity. But yes, I think that's kind of how we're thinking forward. How can we just build stronger? And then also, how can we continue to find resources? Because as Sara is saying, we all rely on how can we just continue with this work and just looking on how can we just manage to do that in a much better way, and how could we also continue to work with the grassroots activity, organizations that are in the field, that are the ones that we're driving people toward also.
Thank you so much. Sarah, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what you're most excited about. What are you looking forward to in terms of Women for Conservation's work into 2025 and beyond? Yeah, could you speak into that, please?
The most exciting thing is continue to develop programs for youth. Connecting with youth in remote areas is so important for us. I work very closely with my daughter, Isabella. So it's passed on 3 generations that we're doing this work working with women and empowerment. Before it was my mother, who I'm continue to carry the torch. And now it's my daughter. And she's young, she's beautiful, she's full of energy. We want to create different ways and different approaches, like Natalia was saying, and connect and mobilizing them. If young people are given the space within that they have a lot of power, so engaging them to help nature and also to seek different ways to do things, I think is the best thing that we can do. And of course, continue to help the network that we are doing. We are now creating a network of women as a conservation circle, a connection that we, from different parts in the world, we are coming together, women from different backgrounds and with the same intention. So expand that network is going to be really interesting for this year.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we've worked together over the past few years, and it's just been amazing to see how much you've grown as an organization, and now you're working in different countries and on different projects, and it's really incredible. So thank you so much for sharing. Natalia or Bill, what are you most excited about for this year and into the future?
I'm excited about a couple things. One is Natty coming out of the world of advertising before she got involved with PMC originally in Guatemala has realized that we have some of the top shows on the air, and so we're now exploring opportunities for public-private partnerships with companies that have products or services that are in line with our values. And so that is one route, I think, towards sustainability. And the other that Natty mentioned is our use of shorter formats that fit the consumption of media reality of a lot of young people around the world that have been shown to be highly effective.
Wonderful. Thank you both so much. There's just one more question that I kind of wanted to get to, just given that this panel is focused kind of more on population and pronatalism. There's been a lot of kind of questions about this in the chat, and I want to just get to this last one of why do you think that there's such a push for pronatalism right now in the United States and even kind of abroad? Is this something that is related purely to economic growth? Is it related to traditional values, or what's the underlying impetus here for this kind of political push, do you think? We can start with Natalia or Bill.
Happy to respond to this because I've been responding to it a lot in media postings. I think what is driving this is corporate interests that have an interest in and financial interests in particular in growth. So companies that have monopoly or close to monopoly situations, companies that are and individuals who are speculating with land purchase and or in the development business think that growth is what drives their profits. And indeed, I think what is the best response to this, but it's an uphill battle with the amount of publicity that these folks have generated, is that what's important is not the gross product, global product, but per capita income. And when you look at per capita income, it often goes in the opposite direction of gross global product. People in non-growing population areas in countries like Japan and Eastern Europe actually have the best per capita economic situation, while the high growth countries like Nigeria have the worst economic situation on a per capita basis. So getting across the idea that what's good for a few capitalists is not necessarily good for everybody is critically important.
Absolutely, and that can be applied to so many different things, that last sentence. Thank you so much. And thank you to both sets of speakers, Sarah, Natalia, and Bill. This has been just an amazing panel discussion. I've learned so much, and it's really great to get to hear more from all of you. I'm going to turn it over to Florence.
Yes. Thank you so much, Hannah, and all our great speakers. This has been really amazing. Right now, we are going to show you a short video that I presented on behalf of Population Connection and Population Media Center. This was during a panel on how the ICPD program of action can accelerate the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals and the interlinkages with other UN fora. So here it is, please. Marian, our VP, is going to run it. Thank you, Marian.
We also have civil society members here with us in the audience. I would like to give the floor to the representative of Population Connection to make an intervention. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair. I am Florence Blondell, speaking on behalf of Population Connection and Population Media Center, both here in the US. The ICPD program of action emphasized the critical linkages between population and sustainable development. Unfortunately, these linkages are still not sufficiently recognized today, resulting in siloed decision-making and lack of progress towards the SDGs. Implementing the program of action, in particular empowering women and girls to take charge of their bodies and lives, as outlined in SDG 5, gender equality, is not just a worthwhile goal in itself. Its achievement is a prerequisite for meeting all SDGs. Improving reproductive health and rights and educating girls are essential to achieving goals 3 and 4, good health and well-being and quality education. In addition,
When women can choose their family size and pursue careers, they are better able to care for their children and contribute to economic development, which is integral to goals 1, no poverty, 2, zero hunger, 8, decent work and economic growth, and 10, reduced inequality. Empowering women is also a requirement for advancing gender parity in decision-making circles. Research shows that higher female representation in government leads to more policies aimed at protecting the environment and improving health, and that including women in peace talks makes them less likely to fail, which is very relevant to Goal 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions. Removing barriers to family planning and girls' education is also one of the most effective ways to accelerate progress towards environmental goals, including Goal 13, climate action, 14, life below water, and 15, life on land. And this reduces pressure on the environment because it helps to slow population growth and increases prosperity. So it improves resilience to environmental shocks. Despite this well-established fact, the importance of girls' and women's empowerment is widely neglected at major international climate and biodiversity meetings, including UN COPs. We implore all CPD58 delegates to highlight these critical linkages at future conferences and to urge your governments to help close the gender funding gap. This is especially crucial in light of the devastating and shameful US aid cuts and a growing movement that is hostile to women's rights. We simply cannot achieve the 2030 vision if we continue to neglect the unmatched power of women's empowerment. Thank you so much. I thank the representative of the Population Connection. We will now turn.
Yes, so that was our statement. It's amazing. And we made another oral statement yesterday. We shall be sharing all of these. They're all, like I said, my face is all over all our channels. So you're going to be seeing a lot of me this week. But yes, thank you for the support. We really appreciate it. Yeah. And we hope something comes out of this, honestly, because we do a lot of talk, but we implement. But this time around, I was listening to so many speakers, so many governments, and everyone seems to want to be on board. I heard from the representative from the World Health Organization who was impassioned and just, stating facts. This is what's going to happen if we don't do this. So hopefully, governments can jump on board, even, just national governments themselves to say, hey, let's fund our programs, let's fund our projects as we wait for US aid to come back. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Florence. And I think we've got about 3 minutes left in our panel discussion, so we can go ahead and end early. We had plenty of time for discussion and for questions, so thank you all for taking the time to so thoroughly and thoughtfully answer all of these discussion questions, and of course also for giving your presentations. It's been a really great time together, and I'm really happy that we got to work together here and today. So I think we want to take a little screenshot. Is that right, Stephanie?
Oh.
Yes, I would love to take a screenshot. I'm gonna give you all a moment and counting down. 1, 2, 3. Amazing. Just want to capture the moment. It was a wonderful presentation. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Florence, for helping moderate. And I will be in touch after the event with lots of resources, everybody's contacts, and a recording of this presentation. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. Speakers, if you want to hop on and say any goodbyes, please feel free to do so.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been a great panel, very well organized, very well run. So thanks so much for including us.
Same here. Thank you so much to Population Connection. You are amazing. Thank you for having us as an international partner. You're making this world a better place. For that, thank you. On behalf of the hundreds of women from Colombia and the Global South, keep going. We need you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, Natalia, please, after you.
No, I'll just, we'll say thank you, gracias, merci. one world, you know, we all have to keep pushing for this solution united. So thank you so much for the space and the patience. As with Sarah and me, you know, being English our second language, you know, we sometimes struggle. So thank you also for the patience.
Yeah, you've done well. You've done well. It's also not my first language, so bear with you. Yes, so I see some people asking for the statement and, you know, saying it was amazing. So we'll be sharing. I see Martin wanting to use it in his talks. Oh, in about 3 weeks. Yes, we shall share all of that. Thank you so much, everyone. And bye-bye.
Thank you.